ASEAN leaders have agreed in principle to admit Timor-Leste as its 11th member and grant it observer status at high-level ASEAN meetings. Now, the bloc says that further steps to bring the country into the fold will be submitted at next year's summit. Singapore welcomes in principle Timor-Leste's eventual membership in ASEAN. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong says that the membership should take place with an objective, criteria-based ASEAN roadmap. He says the bloc should help Timor-Leste build capacity and should work with external partners to achieve this. He also called on ASEAN to maintain unity and continue to champion a rules-based world order. These are principles that he says will continue to serve the bloc well. ASEAN leaders have also decided to beef up their existing strategy towards Myanmar, with reports suggesting an implementation plan could soon be in the works. And the crisis-torn nation has been barred from all ASEAN meetings since last year, including this biannual leaders' summit currently underway in Cambodia. Many have slammed the bloc's so-called five-point consensus agreed upon last year for yielding little progress in securing peace in Myanmar. May Wong joins us live now from Phnom Penh with more on this. May, ASEAN leaders are saying that they are going to review Myanmar's representation at all bloc meetings. Could this indicate a shift in strategy by the group?
I honestly wouldn't describe this as a shift. I would actually say it's more of an incremental measure. That's because they're taking things very slowly and they're taking things very, very progressively because they ultimately don't know what to do with the Myanmar military. Just think about it. ASEAN, think of them as a parent and the Myanmar military as a child. And the child is slapping and beating up a pet rabbit. So the ASEAN, the parent is telling the child to stop beating that rabbit. But the Myanmar military is refusing to do that and ignoring the parent. So right now what the ASEAN leaders are trying to do is to find ways, different ways to try and convince the Myanmar military that we have to really stop. And stop what? The violence for one. Nothing has happened over the last 2 years when it comes to the Myanmar military wanting to comply with the five-point consensus. The five-point peace plan, as they call it, was drawn up more than a year ago. For example, it includes stopping this violence, releasing the political prisoners, and always asking the Myanmar military to allow for more dialogue among all the stakeholders that are involved in this particular issue. But the Myanmar military has refused all of these talks. And that's the reason why the ASEAN leaders are trying to find ways and means on how they can move forward on this solution. Today, Friday, they came up and signed off on 15 points. They consider the issue extremely critical. And that's the reason why, if you want to look at one saving grace, it's one particular measure out of that 15 is that they have tasked the foreign ministers to look into coming up with a timeline as well as to find out exactly what are some of the measurable results that can actually be dictated in order to have a little bit more of a concrete result to prove after this. So we will have to see whether or not the Myanmar military is even going to budge after seeing these 15 points. But I can I can tell you for sure that the Myanmar military is going to come back with their own statement to say that ASEAN has completely disregarded them and completely not involved them in this whole consultation process.
Well, we'll see how they react to what the ASEAN leaders have reviewed. But at the same time, there are plenty of meetings that are being held at the summit. One of them, the bloc held a meeting earlier with Chinese Premier Li Keqiang. He hailed the economic ties of the bloc. What's the significance of these talks?
Extremely significant, given the fact that economy is the key sector that everyone is focused on, particularly after this COVID pandemic, that everyone is trying to revive the financial markets as well as trade. Now, remember here that Li Keqiang is the Chinese premier, and he's having this summit with ASEAN after almost 3 years since the COVID pandemic, and he is actually talking to them before the United States. The focus on the economy is also the fact that he is driving the fact that ASEAN and China have very many commonalities instead of differences. He actually told the ASEAN leaders they should look at where there is so much more connectivity between the two parties. He even highlighted that China is ASEAN's largest trading partner. In fact, he highlighted that in the first 10 months of this year, both trade in terms of a two-way trade between the two parties amounted to almost $800 million US, and that's taking up about 14% year-on-year increase, which is extremely significant given this very complex landscape that we're seeing politically and also with the ongoing pandemic. So he is highlighting the fact that there is a lot of opportunities that are available. There is a lot more at stake here. And also, he pointed out one very important agreement, and that is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership called RCEP. And he's telling all the ASEAN leaders that they should really bank on this particular partnership because it will open up the world and open up even more business opportunities, trading opportunities in order for everyone to benefit mutually.
我们共同推进了 RCEP 的签署实施，合力建设全球最大的自贸区。通过开放联动，使得中国和东盟的合作前景十分广泛。
Now, on Saturday, President Joe Biden will actually meet the ASEAN leaders, and it'll be interesting to watch that particular summit as well to see how the U.S. intends to win back the confidence of this Southeast Asian region.
May, thank you for that update on the latest from the ASEAN Leaders Summit. May Wong there reporting live for us from Phnom Penh.